The the declining of the canoeing culture in the Marshall Islands, and I would safely say it in everywhere in the Pacific Islands, but I speak on the Marshall Islands declining. Um, of course, during the colonization time, a lot of vessels came, were brought in. All of the motor boats came in. Um, I can speak. I can speak about the war till now. So during World War II, a lot of the Marshall Islands, a lot of the places in the Marshalls that were um, um, colonized by the Japanese, uh, they used the canoes as every day, just like everything else. The Japanese worked with the Marshallese worked with the Japanese, and they built canoes and all that. But when the war came into place, I think the military came to the Marshalls, and that's where things changed. I talked to a lot of the elders, and this is when the Japanese were here, everybody had to go to school. And that was a good thing, because everybody went to school. But when the military came here, the process changed. Because the Marshallese were known to go sail into the horizon and they don't see them. They don't know what's really, if they are talking to the Americans or they go fishing. So a lot of the islands in the Marshalls, canoe building were banned. No more canoe buildings. And of course, because the food was very, limited. So no more cutting down breadfruit to build canoes because they need the food. So all of those things actually prevent a lot of the Marshallese from building more canoes. So they don't build canoes, they don't go sailing. And until today, there are some atolls in the Marshalls where they were most populated by the Japanese. There's no canoe. And that was because of that. Fortunately, a lot of those atolls still had some canoeing knowledge, because in our tradition, women also navigate. Women also build canoes. Women also sail canoes. There's no such thing as canoe house or, men's house. It's everybody's house. It's everybody's canoe. Everybody built. Everybody sailed. So that was the reason why a lot of those other, some of the other canoe other atolls had canoes. So when the war finished, then the U.S. military came in with all those, more boats. Give to the chief ship boats, motor, Boston Whalers and Johnson and even Root engines and Mercuries and all, whatever. So the chiefs and the government leaders, they start to have municipal governments. They have big, they have boats. So the canoe builders and the families says, why we sail for 2 hours to that island when we can go with 15 minutes on a boat? And of course, the fuel really, really cheap. Most of the time free fuel, but the fuel really, really cheap in a lot of those during those days. So people use less and less boats. But fortunately, because our islands are scattered everywhere, only some atolls were very spoiled. They had all those accommodations, but more further out, isolated atoll still use canoes. And that's where the canoes of the Marshall Islands, Waan program, or the Waan Island module, came into into effect to really do the job. So documentation of these canoes, we went to the more isolated islands so we can we can bring all the knowledge. And we also visited places where they had no canoes so we can start to revive. So since then, Waan and Majel program has, you know, expanded to where we are right now. You know, to the point even now, I'm so happy because even now, you know, we're building more classrooms. We're building bigger offices, more classroom. It become a real school now. So from decline to revive and reuse. Well, I think, one of the reason why we've been successfully holding on to our canoeing culture in the Marshall Islands is one thing, just, you know, all knowledge belongs to the chiefs. And we still have chiefs that actually sometimes I think they're more powerful than our government. So one of their tools in life is canoe, and they don't want that canoe to be disappear forever. They want to make sure that their knowledge is still alive and strong. And another thing is they also involve the younger generation in each country to make sure that the knowledge keep on, you know, strong. And again, Marshall Islands, as I mentioned many times, that we're atolls. Unlike big countries that can just drive around, we do not drive around the country. We cross the ocean to different part of the country. So the canoe is very needed. It's very useful in these atoll setting. And of course, the chief and the setting of the atolls and different programs using our traditional canoes we make sure that it doesn't fade. And the government seal, the biggest thing in the government seal is canoe and navigation. So, you know, the government acknowledged that the canoe is also a very important tool for their people. So it cannot be just the chief. It has to be the chief or the council of chiefs, the governments, and the people. They have to work together in order to make sure that this knowledge is alive. The biggest sport in the national government's Constitution Day or the anniversary is canoe. And the biggest sport in our annual Culture Day is canoe. Any parade that we have on the road, there's always a canoe as part of the, so we always put canoes on the trucks. So canoe is always like a main attraction, main subject of study, main promotion, main symbol in a lot of our, you know, efforts. Now that we're talking about climate change, canoes also there. It's a tool to combat climate change. So I think the reason those are the reason. We make sure that the canoe is visible because we're ocean. We ocean people. So we have to make sure that we represent the ocean, the land, and the sky, the heaven. So what impact that the canoe have on the maintenance and development of communities? It's a very, I mean, I pretty much already answered, but it's a very important thing because as I'm starting with the education, with the development of our educational efforts to educate our young people, the canoe is part of it. Even the biggest presenter, they come to the Marshall Islands to talk about canoes. How do you utilize the canoe in many of the subject teach in school? And of course, that's how we are also involved in that. Transportation. Our Ministry of Transportation is working with our canoe communities so we can bring in fish more so people can survive on this fish, or we can bring in copra oil so we can, feed different communities in the islands. And canoeing, by tradition, started from the land. Canoe started from a seed of a breadfruit tree. So that seeds we grow in the very small, thin Marshall Island soil, grow bigger and bigger. And as it grows bigger and bigger, the canoe gets bigger and bigger inside that seeds, in that tree. And while it gets bigger, we eat from that. So in order for you to plant, to get a good canoe tree, you have to understand your land. The pillar on land, you have to understand, because you should know where the salt water come in from the windward side of the island, the leeward side of the island, the middle of the island. You have to understand the island in order to use that, to plant a canoe tree. So the connection between you and the island have to be understand and strong. So because of that, now we're planting wiser. We want to make sure that there are land for coconut trees so we can make copra oil. We want to make sure that there are small land here and there for our canoe trees and also our food trees, which is our canoe trees. So the more you know about the canoe, the more you understand about the land, how to develop the land wisely. Now, with the climate change, the salt water come in more and more, so you have to understand where you plant your trees for the future. So these are the developments that we are doing. And of course, the relationship between our chiefs, our land, and us, and our seas. So if you understand that process, you respect the land, respect the ocean, and you respect your traditional leaders, and you respect your government, of course. And so development, its foundation is education. And there are so many part of education that belongs to, that everybody take part in. So the ministry that take care of our plants, our farming, have to understand, they have part in it. The ministry that educate people, they have part in it. The ministry that take care of our culture, they have part in it. So we all work together to develop a Marshall Islands that will fit into the future, that we need to learn to adapt to the changes of the climate that the ocean is bringing, the melting ice is bringing, things that us human beings created. So we need to be able to adapt to those. So that's how we look at development. What I want Waan to look like in the future and the work. Well, first of all, I want to make sure that Waan is still here, especially now that our program is right next to the water. But I want the future to be part of Waan, and I want Waan to be part of the future. I want to work with the young people that we have today to gradually become the leaders of the future, the Waan, so they know and understand how to manage Waan, because they are the future. So how to manage it, how to utilize it well to fit into their future. I am today, they are tomorrow. And we learn from our grandparents who were the yesterday. And because of them, we have a Waan today. And now we're bringing young people who are the future. So we want to make sure that whatever happens in the future, our culture is always there. A lot of scientists say that, maybe the future, the Marshall Islands will be underwater, or maybe we'll be relocated. So regardless of what the future brings, we want to make sure that our tradition, our language, our way of life, who we are, still alive. And canoe is, and will always be, us. Because we came from the ocean, and we will make sure. We have a Marshallese saying, "An bilang-lang koba kamalamado." Every drops count. Every drops together make an ocean. So every one of us in the Pacific Islands together will make sure that we can tame the ocean that is, as it brings us, sadness, to make sure that we all are one. And that's how we look at one. How do I like the canoes to look like, to use, to manage in the future? Well, I see the world is round and it rolls. So I'm sure 1,000 years ago, the canoes that we use today was not the same. There's some changes. So the future will bring new designs to the canoes that will be used in the future to make sure that it fits the needs of the future to survive, to educate, and to enjoy. What we have today is we're so happy with. We brag about it because the design is so beautifully done. And I'm sure in 100 years, however climate change however we adapt to climate change, there'll be some difference. But the difference will benefit the future or the 100 years ago people. But the main thing is it keeps that traditional strong and alive. In our canoes today, the shape of the hull is asymmetric. One side is flat and the other is round. 3,000 years or 2,000 years before the Wright brothers' grandparents were dating, we were using that design. That same design is on the airplane wing. So without that design, the airplane cannot fly. Something that has been used for many, many years. I'm sure in many other places in the Pacific they have something similar to that. That together we maybe put all those technologies together and said, that's the Pacific Island Culture Canoe with all those technologies. On the outrigger, Marshallese canoes go like this, very flexible. And because of that design that we have on it, another design, the flexible design. And of course, today we see it on the car. The car rides smoothly and the tires go up and down. The shock absorber. And many other things that we probably never really thought about. And same as canoes from everywhere in the Pacific. And it depends on the environment, the surrounding of the island, the rocks, the corals, the sand. Even the Marshall Islands, the canoes in the Marshall Islands have a little bit different in each atoll, because some atoll very shallow, some are deep. Anyway, the canoes of the future will be 100% fit the future, and will be 100%. represent our chiefs, our culture, our way of life. Okay, what role does canoe play in the climate change? Well, um, fortunately, canoes don't have any fuel, so there's no climate change effect in that. But the role that canoes play in climate change is to mitigate the problem that climate change is causing around the world. Marshall Islands cause 0.007 toward climate change percent. And Marshall Islands use quite a bit of fuel for their energy, electricity, and also for transportation. As a matter of fact, I think 40% of the transport fuel consumption, come from transporting or shipping goods to the other islands. So all of these things together, it's are negative, causes problem. When we are talking about fossil fuel, these are problems. The canoe is actually a way of mitigating those problems. We're using canoes for sustainable sea transport to fight the fossil fuel. We're building canoes out of our traditional wood, which gives us more projects on replanting trees to make sure that we have more trees for canoe building, for our survival, for housing, and of course to fight the climate change and to hold the soil when the sea comes and erode it. So, and other things, of course, education. So the kids understand the canoes to find more technologies or knowledge, like engineering knowledge, that would help us, to fight the climate change. And now we have more and more Marshallese who are going outside the Marshall and learning to be engineers. So, because because of canoes, of course, they learned about the canoes and the technologies, the engineering part of the spec of canoe buildings and the canoe technology. And of course, the community life, because of the canoes. We all build together, we all learn together, we all eat together, and we fish together, which is part of the canoeing culture. So it just gives that tightness of family living in our small fishing villages in the outer islands. And it gives us that cultural pride, the self-esteem, the proudness of our culture, who we are. So we feel that there is something that we need to bring to the table in order to fight the climate change. And all that together comes from the canoes. Wakukwa chimoro, we say. Wakukwa chimoro. It means canoes bring people together. So it's part of our saying. Canoes bring people together. Every drops together make an ocean. So I'm a drop. My wife is a drop. Every Marshallese is a drop. And us together, we create the ocean that our canoes sail to bring us resources and knowledge and culture tightness as we sail into our future. When you look at the canoeing culture, the canoeing skills, I think the question about does the canoeing develop or provide for a new seascape, or for the seascape almost like landscape, development of the landscape. So development of the seascape, it's just, this is what the canoes are. the development of the seascape is that we are the canoes. It's the biggest part of any Pacific Islanders. The canoes is the biggest part of any Pacific Islanders. But what we're trying to do here, we're trying to use that and look at that picture from different part of a frame, where we try to see how does the canoeing change different development of the seascape. First of all, we are the greenest sustainable sea transport in the world. It's our traditional vessels. So that's why it's very important for this traditional vessel to be part of any conservation, any promotion of conservation, or any promotion of our traditions. It's because it sets the important part of any development that we want in our oceans. How do you look at it? Well, it's the tradition that preserve, it's the tradition that provide culture pride, it's the tradition that provide future engineers to make the ocean better for us. So I believe that canoe, it sets, the canoes already, and the canoes will be part of the development of what we want the future of our ocean looks like. It's one of our pillar, one of our way of life. We cannot just live on land or this, looking at the heaven, because in order to live on land, you have to enjoy the life of the ocean. And especially in the Marshall Islands, we have more ocean than land. So whatever we do with the canoes, it provides a sustainable way of life by utilizing our tradition, our skills, our knowledge, to make sure that we can mitigate so many needs on land by using sustainable gardening, by using sustainable replantation in the future of the way we want the Marshall Islands to look like. We're engineers. We're traditional engineers that build the future. And that future based on our seascape. Without the seascape, there's no landscape. And the canoes is the blueprint of that seascape into our future.